Founder of TrustedSec, a local information security consulting company that I started like 3 months ago. Yeah, funny story. Anyways, this one is about a penetration test that I did most recently that I found was interesting. And what was interesting is it really goes back to the motto of an attacker, right? Very limited exposures, very tight, solid security program, but with enough persistence, you're able to come through and actually gain access to a system and have full access to everything that they have. So, you know, I was put up in a cage, got out of the cage, and mauled a whole bunch of people, women and children. So this is having some fun with Dell. So here's a scenario. Doing a penetration test for a large company. And what they were testing is basically they had an isolated architecture. And the way that this company is set up is a bit unique. They're kind of like an ISP in a sense for, I can't say it, never mind. But essentially they're kind of like an ISP, okay? And so they have this, what they call a high security zone, or HSZ. And basically, they've done a significant amount of work around a lot of stuff, like port-based authentication. So when you plug into the network, you're isolated and contain your own individual segment. You only have access to certain ports and protocols. All of the web applications that they have in there are dynamic in nature, have a whole bunch of security controls around it. So a very, very good, solid-looking type environment that you would expect it to be. So the situation is, they literally had proper standardization and very little dynamic input on the applications that they have. So 80443, right? So we have HTTP and HTTPS, so we only have web applications available to us. They're all running Server 2008 R2 IIS 7.5, so fully patched. Okay, no go there. Certificate-based authentication to the majority of the web applications, so you had to have a certificate to get into the actual site themselves. So I'm sitting there, I'm like, God, this is gonna suck. I had like a week out there, right? So you're sitting out there, you're like bored for a week, you're like start like getting really creative. And so locked down everything, no VLAN hopping, tried literally everything I could possibly think of to break out of that cage. So I was starting to get a little sad, and it did hurt the pride a little bit first. So then tried some art poisoning, which I was in my own individual segment, so I art poisoned myself. And I played around myself for a while, so that sounds kind of strange. But so I art poisoned myself, and I was just kind of checking out what I was browsing for a while. I got really bored because it was getting really, really bad, right? And so there's no one else in the same subnet, so I'm literally just sitting there with my hands behind my back, like, hey, what do I even do in this? So you go through certain phases when you do these type of penetration tests, right? You go from the first, which is excitement, like I'm going to break into these guys, I'm going to get into everything they have. Then you get like, oh man, this is going to suck. Then you get to, oh man, this really sucks. And then you take a nap like halfway through the day. And then you get your second win, which is, okay, I'm gonna have to find something, or else I'm like, hey, you have nothing on your report here. So I start to get a little creative. So it's creative time. So thinking about this, we only have, our only viable ports are 8443. Dynamic applications are out of the question, small in nature. Anything such as fuzzing, directory brute forcing, bypasses, etc. is all futile. It was nothing there. Like, no backup files, no directory traversals, no SQL injection, no RFIs or LFIs, nothing, right? So it's a rough one. So I'm going through, and I'm looking through all of these systems, and then I find this weird subnet, and it was off of a completely separate thing, and I got through packet sniffing. It just happened to be a broadcast from a specific subnet from one of the border routers, and all of a sudden I find you. And it's a Dell chassis management interface, okay? And so the Dell chassis management interface, and what it is basically when you buy a Dell blade server, you get this big hunk of thing that has a whole bunch of blades in it, right? And you pop different things in and you share different resources with this big chassis. And what happens when you install these is it installs a web application, kind of like, is anybody familiar with like Integrated Lights Out, HP's Integrated Lights Out, or any of those other ones where you can kind of console into machines and stuff like that if the machine's down? So the Dell chassis has something similar, and they have this thing called DRAC, which is basically a management interface for these type of environments. Now with HP Lights Out, or Integrated Lights Out, the passwords are random, so when you get it, it ships on the side of the box there, so you can kind of log in via that way. But with Dell servers, they come default with username, root, password, Calvin. So I find this gem, and I find a default credentials of root and Calvin, which at this point is something, right? I'm like, hey, I compromised a Dell DRAC server, great, right? So I get inside. This is logging into the Dell DRAC server. And by the way, I found the root password from just one of their documentation, so it's nothing special. I mean, you go to their documents, it says, hey, you log in with root Calvin, right? So there's only one instance of this. So we get in with root Calvin. This is the DRAC interface, the Integrated Lights Out Access Controller. This is one of their most recent versions, 6 Enterprise Edition. Okay, and then default credentials, but who cares, right? We get into this thing, and literally all you can really do is reboot the attached server, which I guess could be bad, right? You can sit there and be like reboot, 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 and then the customer gets pissed and kicks you out. You can check health statuses around the drives and hardware. Yay, right? And the attackers love that. And then you can grab SNMP community strings if they're configured, but they of course weren't, so no SNMP community strings. So you literally have like reboot, 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 or nothing at all, right? So as an attacker, we're like, okay, well this is all I have. There's like nothing else in this subnet except for this one thing right here. And this is it. This is all I got. Hey, I got root Calvin on your machine. This is awesome, right? Yeah, yay. So that's pretty much a bore, right? Now, when you start looking and you start getting creative, as you would, right? You're in this cage, you're trying to figure out your way out. You become creative with certain things. You start clicking through every possible menu you possibly can think of and trying thinking of different ways that maybe you'd not have thought of. With root Calvin, you can actually SSH into the DRAC server itself and do a bunch of configuration things there, but there's nothing really good there either. So it's like a big bore. However, you start going through, and I find this fun part, which is the virtual console access, which is similar to Integrated Lights Out, right? You can click on the virtual console access, and you get a nice little pop-up with a Windows machine that's attached to it, or whatever it ends up being attached to, okay? So I pop it up, and there's nothing running. I'm like, no operating system. I'm like, oh, that's freaking great, right? I got no operating system now, so this is even fun. It's getting better. But, sorry, I was trying to figure out what I was saying here. So you have the ability to review the console, but 9 times out of 10, either there's going to be no operating system or the machine's going to be locked, so there's really nothing there you can do. However, you have this really nifty thing called virtual media mount. Click. So let's go with a quick scenario recap. We have a heavily fortified area, only 18443 is allowed. The Dell DRAC is compromised with the ability to attach any media that you want to, virtual media devices. Looking good. So the attack. You mount a virtual media device with backtrack and ISO, right? You reboot the server, you boot into your ISO and pen test behind the firewall. So if you think about it, you just loaded an ISO that's in a Dell chassis server with the remote backtrack ISO that's now sitting inside of their firewall behind all their perimeter controls. So now I have access behind the firewall to do whatever I want to. And of course, egress-wise, they weren't doing anything, so I just did a reverse SSH back, and then I have full console access into that actual environment. So from there, further penetrated, got access into all of their systems, and then had access to everything else. Pretty simple, right? That's just one scenario. There's a few different little ones. So here's step one. Log into the DRAC access, and I changed, under the virtual console media, if you go to configuration, there's an option to switch it from the ActiveX controls to the Java controls. The ActiveX controls were really buggy for me, and the virtual media mount wasn't working. So I switched to Java, and I was able to get Java stuff to work. Then you go into the virtual media side of the house, you connect it, and here's this great little thing here that you can mount a specific ISO or whatever you want to inside of the actual chassis itself. So you're inside of that blade, right, and you have a full-fledged operating system with disk, network, RAM, everything. And you now have the ability to actually go through and do it. Step 3, boot from a virtual CD-ROM. And literally you hit like F12 at the beginning to get this menu, so just a heads up. So now you got the virtual CD-ROM. Next, now you have a backtrack box inside the network. And this is, this is actually inside of the virtual media console that you have access to. So now you have full access to the background environment you can then further penetrate. So some other scenarios. If, say for example, sorry, I blurted it out. It was pretty bad. There's other scenarios that you can use in this type of thing. If you don't have the type of scenario that I use, say for example, I was trying to break in and I already had access to the full-fledged internal network. I'm not going to sit there and try to put a backtrack machine on the inside network when there's no egress, right? But most cases, you're going to have a Server 2008 infrastructure in place where there's an actual server sitting there. So what you can do is you can mount the ISO onto that Windows Server 2008 or 2003, whatever ends up being attached to that, reboot it, it would reboot that ISO and use something like the sticky keys attack or the utilman attack, which I'll talk about in a second. And so what that allows you to do with the utilman attack, if you're not familiar, you basically reboot into a backtrack machine. You mount the NTFS partitions with Windows, and then you go to c:\Windows/system32, and then you take utilman.exe, rename it to utilman.exe.back, like a backup file, and then you just copy command.exe to utilman.exe. Then you unmount it, reboot the machine, and then you just hit hold down the start menu and hit U, which launches utilman and gives you a nice command prompt in the Windows Control Delete screen running a system. So now you have full access to that machine to do whatever you want to. So super simple. But easy way to get around it and get full access to the machine, right? And now pop that box and further penetrate the network. So here's how to do utilman. Once inside, mount the NTFS share as read-write. It's just like that. Make dir, mount Windows, whatever you want to call it, and backtrack. And then mount -t NTFS3G, and then whatever your adapter is going to be, so HDA1 or SDA1, and then mount it in that Windows directory we just created. That should actually say Windows. But once mounted, go to the system32 directory, move the utilman.exe to utilman.back, copy command.exe to utilman.exe, and then unmount it, and then reboot.
You can do the same thing with
set HE, which is the sticky keys.
Yep.
So the set HE.exe is another method with utilman. What happens with the sticky keys one is if you do set HE, you make a backup file of set HC.exe, which is also located in system32, and you move command.exe to set HC. You hit the shift key 5 times to trigger sticky keys, and it pops up a command prompt for you as well. So there's a few different methods to do it to get around the authentication mechanism.
Still work?
What's that?
Screensaver still work?
I don't think .str files work anymore. Not that I'm aware of. I haven't tried it, to be honest. I haven't tried it for a long time. But it might. But you can see this is running a system. And if you want to get a nice little start menu, you just type in explore.exe and it launches the start menu for you. So it's kind of funny having a start menu down here and then you still have your login screen right here. Kind of cool. So with this attack, I released a new tool called the DellDrac and Chassis Scanner for default credentials. I got very sophisticated with the naming scheme like this. But what this does is it scans subnets for default installations of DellDrac/chassis servers. And they're two different things. Like the chassis management suite manages all of the DRAC servers, okay? So if you get the chassis, you have access to the rest of them too. But if there's not the chassis, you have the DRAC one. But this scans for both of them. What it does is it's just a simple a session ride where it does a post to, if it detects port 443 open, it does a post to the specific URL parameter that's there and looks for a specific response back, knowing that it's a Dell chassis or Dell DRAC. I tested this with versions 5 and 6, so I know that it works pretty much cross-platform all the time. There's specific cookie values that get passed back. But this will scan the entire subnet. So if you just give it, Python DellDrac.py 10.1.1/24, it goes in and scans the entire /24. You can do /24 took probably about 4 to 6 seconds, and a class B takes probably about an hour or so. So you can pretty much scan your entire internal infrastructure pretty quickly with it. And it's not intrusive. It's not going to crash anything. It's just looking for specific post values, for those default credentials. And so it'll tell you all those real time. And it's pretty quick. And this is also integrated into the new version of the Social Engineer Toolkit 4.0 that was just released yesterday. Was it yesterday? 2 days. Was it 2 days ago?
Yeah, it was 2.
Okay, 2 days ago. Was it 2 days ago?
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, 2 days ago. So the Social Engineer Toolkit 4.0, which was released 2 days ago, has this included in it as well. So a new tool released there. So some mitigations. Obviously, change the default creds from root Calvin to something complex. That's pretty much it. So, I mean, that's really all you need to do. I have no idea what this has to do with that slide, but I have to put it in there anyway. Nor do I know what this has to do with anything but So, the whole point of this part right here, and I'm going to get into something else in a second.
That's going to be all over DerbyCon.
Oh, yeah.
With your face on it.
I know. They've already photoshopped that with my face on it all over the place. And the worst part about it is don't Google unicorn guy at work, because it's definitely not safe at work. And they literally have taken all the unicorn man pictures and put my faces on them, so that's not good. I think I look better than that, but anyways. the whole point of this, though, is something small, right? You know, something that as a pen tester, you know, for me even specifically, if I had access to a wide plethora of things and resources and attacks out there, I probably would have skipped past the Dell Drac thing, but like, hey, it's just a Dell Drac server and whatever. I wouldn't even looked at it. You know, in this case, you know, you're put in kind of a tight confinement where you have to get very creative with the type of attacks that you use. And that's the whole thing, getting back to thinking outside of the box and not doing things necessarily the same. This attack is extremely easy, right, when you think about it and you use it. It has a lot of applicability when you're doing a penetration test, yet we've never had any type of post on it, we've never talked about it before, you know, nothing like that's ever happened. And that's what pen testing is all about, figuring out different ways to break into an organization, different ways that you can get in that someone may have not have thought of before, and getting creative with it, because that's exactly what an attacker is going to do. They're going to sit there and think outside the box, they're going to think of different ways to get into an organization, and they're going to go and do it. So this is just an example as an attacker. What's that?
Like coupons.
Like coupons. Coupons. So of course, you know, a lot of the things were around the social engineer toolkit around questionnaire, so I couldn't leave the talk without talking about set version 4. Has anybody had a chance to play with it yet? The new version?
A little bit.
Okay. So if you're not familiar with the social engineer toolkit, it's a tool that I started about 2.5 years ago, and it's really just become one of the standards in penetration testing and social engineering. Like, it's the #1 tool for social engineering and hacking, which is cool. And we're in version 4, which is really neat. This version, about 2.5 months ago, I figured I was just going to create version 3.6, but then I started adding more onto it, and adding more onto it, and then more onto it. I'm like, whoa, this is really turning into like a really big thing. So is anybody here from an antivirus company? Can we shut that off for a second? So there's a lot of other things that I added into it as well. For example, the Java applet attack now uses what's called PyInjector, which is a tool that I wrote and got a lot of, there's already a lot of research done on it before, but I built the actual injector tool within Python. And what you can do with Python, and I've talked about in other classes, is you can byte compile Python into its own executable. So it wraps the Python interpreter into the executable itself, so you don't have to have Python installed on the victim machine. And what happens is it injects shellcode straight into memory. So when you double click the exe, nothing happens, but when you give it parameters around shellcode, it goes and it shoots it straight into memory, and then you have shellcode injection straight into memory. Now the second part about it is, can you pause it again for a second? Sorry.
Cool.
So here's a video, if you haven't seen it yet, that I did on the social engineering toolkit, and I'll walk through the actual steps. Has anybody seen the video yet? Yeah. I can do the music.
Do core, man. Do the music.
I can do the music. I'll do the music. No, I'm not gonna do it. So this version is called Balls of Steel, from my favorite band, Steel Panther. So these are some of the features lists that we did in the actual thing. But basically, I already talked about the encrypted payloads, obfuscation literally everywhere. PyInjector is new to the actual applet attack. Configurable shellcodes. With the old version of SET, when you did the alphanumeric shellcode injection through PowerShell, you couldn't specify what payloads you wanted to. Now those are all configurable now through the second.config file, so you can actually change those and configure them in a different way. And we also added new TNZ payloads. The guys at Offensive Security released this thing called PNZ, which is its own self-correcting TNZ payload, where when you plug it in, say something happens in between, it actually corrects itself to go and fix it, and then drops the payload onto the system itself, and then uses a combination of dip switches. And is everybody familiar with TNZs? Is anybody not familiar with TNZs?
They're just like little dip switches you plug in, right?
Here, I'll show you.
Arduino based.
Yeah.
I think I've seen those.
If you haven't seen them, they're these little things here. And I just got a new bag, so it might not be in the right. I think it's in here. Yeah. So this is like a weaponized TNZ that has dip switches on it, and it has a combination of dip switches and an SD card mount on. And then the actual TNZ device is this little guy here, this little chip. And it's just an Arduino USB chip. And what happens with this is it gets detected as a keyboard, and then it has onboard memory, which you can program when you plug it in. You know, a lot of people disable auto-run. So when you plug this in, it emulates a keyboard and drops a payload onto the system real quick. So with the new version of SET, we added a new they added the PNZ attack that Offensive Security came out with, and added that to it as well. So that's in there. Randomized payload dropper. So when we dropped payloads before, sometimes they had static names in them. Like for example, mac.bin and nix.bin and things like that. Those are all completely randomized and obfuscated each time now. So it's never the same name again. The applet was completely rewritten, like from bottom up. The way that we did redirection, if you look at the Java applet attack, when you click run, what happens then is it detects that the payload's been executed, and then it redirects the victim back to the legitimate site. That was all rewritten to be more stable. The actual repeater, when you hit cancel, the applet pops up again, and you cancel, pops up again. You can't even like exit out unless you control delete or text kill iExplorer, making it really annoying so people hit run. That was rewritten. The web cloner is what I probably enjoy. I'm happy about this one. The web cloner originally, and this set's been an evolution. When I first came out with the Java applet attack, which was one of the first attacks that set ever had in it, I used wget. So if you had wget installed, if you didn't, I had the binaries actually incorporated into the toolkit. So wget was used to mimic, an Internet Explorer browser to go rip the website down, pull it, rewrite it, do all the bad stuff to it. With the new version, it's completely native Python. So it's just the actual cloner itself goes and clones the website through Python natively. It still emulates Internet Explorer browser, and then it goes through there. Improve repeater. The new Internet Explorer 0 day was incorporated into it as well. So we got the IE 0 day in there. Well, it's a 0 day until Friday. There's workarounds, I guess. Yeah. So it ended up being about 50 different additions to the actual toolkit itself, about 2 months worth of development. So here's some of it. This is an example of the Java applet attack using PyInjector, which is the new one to the set. So we're going to launch that. This is version 4.0. And we're going to go to the social engineering attacks, the website attack vector. Then we're going to select the Java applet attack. We're going to clone a website. And then we're going to clone trustystech.com. It's going to go rip the site, rewrite it, do all this stuff programmatically for you. Then you select the PyInjector shellcode injection, which is a new option. We're going to do it on port 443, and then our payload back is going to be a interpreter reverse TCP. But conversely, you can use HTTPS or HTTP as well if you want to do inline proxy, smart proxy stuff. And what's happening here is it encrypts it, basically encodes it. Then it's generating the shellcode for PowerShell, the x86 version, and the x64. It's generating all the OS X payloads because the Java applet obviously is native, so it can target OS X, Linux, Windows, whatever you want.
Sorry.
When it goes and launches Metasploit, the web server is running in the background, and then it goes and launches Metasploit, waiting for those connections back to us, right? It's a reverse connection. We're going to go to a victim. The victim's going to click run. It's going to drop the payloads onto the system. The system's then going to call back out to us on port 443. So here's our victim machine. This is a fully patched Windows 7 machine. We're going to that IP address. And it loads our website. Everything looks great, fine and dandy. And the one thing I did change, that pops up here, is this. So there's two methods to do this. This is what we call a self-sign certificate. So you just self-sign it with whatever you want to. I self-signed it with something like Microsoft or Google or whatever. You see the name of this Java Security Verified Safe. I changed that parameter now, so that's all different, but you can customize that in the config. And you notice the publisher says unknown. Well, I think I've showed it here a couple times, but what you can also do too is register a company in the state of Ohio for $50. And then for $250, you can buy a code signing certificate with whatever you want to. So I own Verified Publisher LLC. So when it pops up, it says, publisher name, it says Verified Publisher. It's a legitimate, code signing certificate, so it looks legitimate in nature in every single way. So if you got $300 to spend, it makes it much more believable. And to be honest with you, people will click this no matter what. So not a big deal. So it's safe. It looks good.
Can I just ask real quick? Is that your experience? Like, people will almost always click that.
I've never had anybody from a company other than like the security guys that knew was happening not click that.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
every single time. Especially when they see the Java Security Verified or something like that. Anything that makes them feel safe in nature, we're fine. No problem. And you notice when this is up and running, you can't do anything in the browser. You can't do a new tab. You can't do whatever. I mean, you can't function inside Internet Explorer until this is clicked on. And you cancel, just pops right back up for you, and it's just a second later. So they can't do anything in the browser until they hit run. So it makes it much more effective that way too. So they click run. If you notice here, we're at 192.168.225.143 on the top, right? We're gonna wait here. All of the decryption and stuff that you might notice a little bit of a delay now when the actual things run to when the actual payload hits. That's because there's literally an ass ton of encryption going on. And so all the decryption and everything else that's going on takes a little bit for the decryption routines to cycle through. So we get our payloads back, our Metasploit payloads. Notice there's 2 of them. Remember I said before that there was 3 methods that SET uses to deliver payloads? So what happens is the first one, the shellcode injection works. If you notice here, we're running under the process PowerShell. So we spawn PowerShell. We're running under the context of a reverse interpreter shell under that PowerShell system. And then from there, we spawn another instance, which is our PyInjector exploit. Now we know that one's successful, so we don't trigger the 3rd response. So we've gotten 2 unique payloads, one through PowerShell and one through our PyInjector method. So now we have full access to it. It's the machine, and we're good to go. Man. If you go back to the Windows machine, notice we were redirected back to the legitimate website. So the victim never knew that they were at a bad one in the first place. This is the drag attack real time. This is what we saw just a minute ago. And by the way, if you go to the blog post, there's a blog post that walks you through step by step how to do that and the utilman attack, how to do the mounting of the Windows machine and then doing the utilman attack and then hitting Control or Command U, Windows U, to trigger the utilman utility. But here what we're going to do is we're going to go to the fast track menu. We're going to go to the new Dell Drag Chassis default checker. And we're going to enter the IP address in what we want to scan. I wanted you to read that this way. Pretty good. So it's going to scan the subject. You see how fast this goes. So I found one here, one there. There, and it's done. So it scanned the Class C in that quick of a time, so pretty quickly. Notice here it compromised 2 different things. It compromised the Dell chassis, which is that management interface, and it also compromised the Dell drag service as well. So it gives you a report of both of those, right? There's the PNZ attack, and this isn't anything spectacular. I don't actually do the PNZ. I was running a little low on time when I was making the movie. It was like 2 a.m. But here in the Arduino-based attack vectors, you see the new one, which is the PNZ attack 13. You just select that, and it'll automatically generate the PDE file for you that has all your stuff in it. One thing it doesn't do that I just didn't have time to complete in version 4. Literally, the PNZ attack came out the day of version 4.0. Is it doesn't ask you for your IP address or anything like that. So you have to manually go in and change all your IP addresses in the PNZ.pd file. But in 4.1, I'll have that knocked out, so it's all automatic. So it'll rewrite those for you automatically and put all the payloads in for you. You can see here's the actual PNZ payload. I kind of scroll through it. See, they did a significant amount of work on it. It's pretty cool. So, any questions?
How's the sanity going?
Sanity's going awesome, man.
Yeah.
Kicking it, killing it. Sanity workout.
So the payload portion of life is selecting the Hyperion portion. Is that the reason why it's taking miles system?
No, Hyperion isn't used for that method. It's. I don't want to go into too many details to remove it, but it's significant AES encryption coupled with a bunch of other stuff on top of it. Anti-debugger libraries and things like that that I embedded into those executables that go in real time. So it's not using Hyperion, but there are a lot of encryption routines that has to go before it executes. Plus, on top of it, when it's pulling the parameters from the HTML website, those are also encrypted. They have to be decrypted and then ran and run in memory. So there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes now that wasn't necessarily happening in the past versions because all those, all the 80 vendors were writing stuff for my tool. So a lot of stuff happens now where behind the scenes it takes a little while. And I actually, can you pause it for a second?